Story 1. I was an alcoholic and did not put in nearly as much effort as he did. His last straw was a huge argument we had while I was in the hospital from drinking. I was mad he had to go back to work after being with me for a week, and he wanted me to go to rehabilitation. Story 2. I loved my husband of 35 years more than anything, but drug addiction will take its toll on anyone. He would not stop, so I had to leave. Story 3. Together from 2002 to 2014. The last straw was money. She could not stop spending. She had us on a financial treadmill at top speed. She was a stay-at-home mom, but once the kids were in all-day school, she increased her spending. Multiple new cars per year. New furniture constantly. Taking neighbors and friends out for lunch and paying for everyone every time. Neighbor down on their luck? Here is a $1,000 check. Credit card bills had $20,000 in spending for a single month, not including household bills. There was no stopping it. Take away the credit cards and insist on a budget and she would cry and break things. I loved her and despised her at the same time. Story 4. Together 20 years, 6 children. I put him first in everything. He was an alcoholic. Anything he wanted, he got. He wanted a business, we achieved it. Then he destroyed it. His entire system in life was to crave attention from anyone who would give him the time of day, then self-sabotage every relationship or situation he was in, and blame everyone else for the fallout. I supported him emotionally, financially, mentally, and physically. When I needed anything, it didn't happen. I herniated multiple discs in my back, and the chronic pain after 2 major surgeries to repair was unbearable. I became slightly depressed. He told me that my inability to cope with my pain was impacting him negatively, and I had to stop because his needs were more important. I never achieved anything in my life except being a wife and mother. Every opportunity one had to progress career-wise, he wanted another child, and those plans were inevitably put on hold. He refused contraceptives. Anything I tried caused huge problems. He would only use the pull-out method and then conveniently not pull out when he wanted me pregnant. He had a vasectomy, and when I was offered a promotion to management, he had it reversed. The final straw came. The business had failed 3 years prior, but he was still clinging to it. We were over $30,000 in debt. I had payment plans coming out everywhere, and every cent was accounted for so we didn't lose our house. My grocery budget was $90 a week for 8 people. I had saved for the entire year and had $500 put aside to cover Christmas for all 6 kids and him. I never got presents. The kids would wrap my books in newspaper and give them to me instead. Except the one time he put an extravagant box under the tree filled with coal because I didn't deserve anything. I got an email that he had ordered over $500 worth of paint for a bike he wanted to paint for a friend to boost the business. After asking how he was paying for it, he demanded the kids' Christmas money. I flat out refused to do this and stood there for an hour being told how worthless, useless, and stupid I was, how I never supported him or believed in him, and how we were all just in his way. I walked away to the bedroom to cry where the kids couldn't see me, and something snapped. I literally packed up as much as I could, got my mother over, and loaded myself and the kids in the car with as many possessions as we could carry and left. It's been 5 years. He fought for custody, filed false allegations and charges in court, only to retract them on the day of the hearing. He had the shared custody arrangement he wanted and then, after 8 months, dumped the kids on my doorstep one day for a week-long stay. He said he was leaving to focus on his business and hasn't been back. He makes random calls to child protection and the police claiming I'm abusing the children. He owes $25,000 in child support. The last straw should have come sooner, but I'm glad it happened. Story 5. I seem to recall once reading that money is the #1 factor in divorce, and based on the responses here, that certainly seems to be true. Story 6. Could not apologize for hurting me. Actually, he never apologized for anything. He was not a very good person. Story 7. She said she wanted to open the marriage and be with other people. I said if that was the case, we should split. And we did. Hurt. But looking back, I am glad she ended our relationship. Story 8. Realizing he was mentally and emotionally abusing our son, I knew he was abusing me and had known for a long time, but didn't have the strength to act on it. But to abuse my son? I am going to be very angry with you. Story 9. My wife stopped taking her birth control without discussing it with me. Then she lied about it when confronted. She finally told the truth. She wanted time off work and thought accidentally getting pregnant was the answer. I knew that I would never be able to trust her again. I left her that night. Story 10. The Friday after Mother's Day, he texted me that he wanted to talk. I asked him why, and he said he didn't want to talk over text, so we talked at lunch. He said he was unhappy, and I asked if he wanted a divorce. He said yes. I had to leave work because I was so upset. This was after my daughter had moved 2,000 miles away for a job. Long story short, he admitted later that he thought I would just figure things out like I always did and not actually go through with it. He was trying to control me. Too bad for him. It was the best thing that ever happened to me. I have the perfect little house with the perfect little garden and all the pets. He's still renting a room from some guy. Story 11. He was lazy and irresponsible. He did not want to work while I had 2 jobs. The money and time he did have, he spent on video games. He had a horrible video game addiction. Story 12. The last straw was that I felt like a shell of myself and realized how much more at peace and content I was to be alone. Story 13. It's not so much a last straw, but I am divorcing her. Not because of cheating, but because I deserve better. She doesn't cook meals, tidy up, work, and is bad with the kids. She only knows how to shout and scream. Anything I say or do, she questions or fights about, even small, unimportant things. I added onion salt to the shopping list and she started asking why I needed it and what it was for, saying we already have some. She spends about 70% of her time in bed scrolling through social media with no desire to do anything. I am just tired of dragging her around. I spent the last bit of money in our account on a day out for her, the kids, and myself. The only comment she had was, "I thought we had no money." No appreciation, no thanks, no concern. To make matters worse, on rare occasions when I read her messages, she is talking negatively about me to her friends, saying how useless I am. I earn over £140,000 per year on my own and manage all the bills and phone calls. She wants for nothing. I work from home and help with the kids. I would say I am an awesome dad. I strike a good balance between discipline and playfulness. I only yell at my kids in very extreme circumstances. I have been with her for 15 years, and she has been this way for about 6 of them. I stayed in the hope she would follow my lead and improve. I have constantly made excuses to keep myself here, but it has finally dawned on me she is never going to change. I am miserable and have no friends. She convinced me to stop speaking with my family, so now I don't. I have no friends or family and I am isolated. But that is not going to stop me from leaving. In August, we have a family holiday booked. I have already told her that afterwards I will be selling the house and filing for divorce. Story 14. I had a miscarriage and he did not support me in any way. He used it as an excuse to stop talking to me. We lived in the same house and had been married for 5 years. While I was in the hospital, he stayed home to play video games with his friends. He developed an emotional relationship on the internet. The final straw was when I called him out for his mistreatment, and he told me to go away. I left the following day. After that, he realized he made a mistake and begged me to come back. I have now been divorced for almost 2 years and have a wonderful new boyfriend who makes me feel valued and loved. Story 15. The security guard at work stopped me to ask if I was okay or needed anything after watching us talk outside the office door. A trained professional saw my husband as a physical threat to my safety. Story 16. Together for 8 years, married for 1. We were high school sweethearts. I became pregnant at 19. I was very mentally unstable during our entire relationship due to unhealed trauma, which I have since dealt with and grown from. But we were just not a good match at all. The last straw, when I realized we were never going to work, was after a rare night out. He got jealous of my obviously gay friend who was there with his husband. I remember looking at him and knowing we were done. It was a sad moment because we had been through so much together, but I knew it needed to end. We are really good friends now and co-parent from different countries. I am currently married to an amazing man who helps me raise my daughter from a previous marriage and our new baby. Best decision ever. Story 17. There was a significant disconnect in our communication and personalities. Constant arguments and blow-ups over the most petty things led me to end it. Story 18. She was an alcoholic. She took the only new car I have ever had and crashed it into a family in a van at 6 p.m. while intoxicated. She was sentenced to 10 years on her sixth driving while intoxicated offense. Story 19. She ran up over $30,000 in credit card debt behind my back. After going through bankruptcy, she swore never to use a credit card again. 2 years later, she got another credit card, saying it was only for emergencies. Shortly thereafter, there was an emergency need to buy new curtains and blinds for all the windows, costing over $1,000. I moved out and filed for divorce. I am now comfortably retired. Had I stayed, I am quite sure I would still be working and broke. She recently stopped working and has nothing to show for over 40 years in the labor force, having lived beyond her means her entire adult life. Story 20. He would not help around the house or with our 2-year-old son. From birth, he barely helped and even bragged that he made it about 3 months without changing a diaper after secretly challenging himself to see how long he could avoid diaper duty. He spent all our money on cigarettes and beer, to the point that I had to hide money to make sure I could buy diapers. He was out of the house every day, leaving me home alone with our child 6 days a week, and Sundays were spent with his family all day. The final straw was when he started flipping out and throwing things at me in front of our child. Why? Because I was begging him to help me, to stop spending an hour after work on the front porch smoking until our child went to bed, to stop ditching me every Saturday evening for guys' night to go play games. After I left, he had to get help from everyone to take care of his own 2-year-old son because he literally did not know how to do any of it after avoiding it for so long. Story 21. I felt like a single parent while married, so I made myself an actual single parent. Life is easier now. Story 22. I was waiting for her to come home from a trip. I realized that instead of missing her and eagerly anticipating the return of my lover, I felt like the regional manager was coming to inspect my workplace. I knew that if I had not accomplished enough while she was gone, I would be in trouble, and that no amount of work I could accomplish would be enough. Story 23. The last straw was him screaming and yelling at midnight, telling me that I had until Monday to leave. It was Friday night after drinking all day and night. He said he was sure I was cheating just because earlier that day I went to Reading for sightseeing on my rest day. He then apologized the next day, but I just couldn't live like that anymore after more than 9 years waiting for him to change. I'm not his emotional punching bag. He is still holding my possessions in his house, trying to get me back. He even blocked my number after I transferred him the money to pay my phone bill. He put my phone bill under his account when we lived together, which was unwise of me to think he was looking after me. For days, I couldn't make calls, accept calls, send texts, or use data. He threw me out knowing I have nowhere to go or support, as my family is back in Asia. Then he blocked my phone just to punish me for leaving him. Never again. I am glad that a former colleague is willing to rent out her room to me and that the only close friend I still have, despite not being in contact since last year, is willing to help. Those two angels have been my rock, and I vow I will survive this. I have a new phone number, and although there are nights that I cry myself to sleep, overall I am happier. Please don't be me. Story 24. After 17 years together, my answer is that it is complicated. We were no longer a fit for each other. He grew to take advantage of me, and I did the same to him in different ways. We both carried a lot of baggage from childhood that neither of us addressed, which also played a part. Finally, he was a pathological liar, and I did not fully realize it until near the end when his lies began to unravel. Story 25. You can only be as happy as the least happy person in the marriage. I stayed longer than I should have out of loyalty, love, care, and hope, while becoming a ghost in my own life. It was not healthy for either of us, and my staying did not help. For a long time, I thought the problem was money, but when we had money, things did not improve. I guess that was the issue. You cannot save someone from themselves, so I left everything behind and started from zero, alone on my own. It was hard to give up hope and overcome the guilt that I might be abandoning someone who was suffering and might need me. The truth was I was not seen, needed, nor helping. I was just dying along, and it did not matter. Story 26. During our last argument, my ex-wife threw a 5-pound stone ashtray at my head from a few feet away while I had my back to her. I turned around just in time, avoiding a crushed skull. The ashtray made a huge hole in the wall instead of hitting me. Story 27. He told me a mutual friend spoke negatively about me. I asked if he stood up for me. He did not. He just wanted me to feel bad. Story 28. There wasn't really a last straw. I slowly realized over several years that I wasn't happy anymore and no longer had romantic feelings. I hadn't had them for quite some time. I still love him, but more like a brother or a good friend. We were barely having sex, and when we did, it wasn't great anymore. There were some smaller issues: imbalance of home and kid duties, untreated attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, and an age difference. If we stayed together, I would probably end up cheating or becoming horribly depressed. Story 29. I'm not sure if my story counts. I dated for 3 years and was married for 3. He was very chill, almost to the point of being monotone. We never fought, and I had to watch what I said because he would try to get me anything I mentioned liking, even if I didn't actually want it. Looking back, it's obvious that he would just do whatever he thought I wanted. It was almost impossible to get him to give his opinion on something, and he didn't even see the house I bought until it was time to move in because the only thing that mattered was that I liked it. After moving into our new house that we bought so that we could start having children, his friend let slip that he had a vasectomy at 24. He had mentioned that he didn't know if he could have children but hadn't explained that he did not want children so strongly as to have surgery. He eventually admitted to lying to me about almost everything in our relationship. He still didn't want children and was willing to adopt or let me use a sperm donor so that I could have what I wanted. I couldn't get over the feeling of betrayal. I also don't believe people who don't want children should have children and decided I didn't love him, mostly because I felt like I didn't know the real him, enough to choose him over the possibility of having kids. Story 30. I brought home guinea pigs for the children without asking him. It was a lead-up to his severe alcoholism, domestic violence, lying, and cheating. When I brought home the guinea pigs, he was so angry that I told him it was over. Story 31. After we got married, we moved 1,000 miles away from home for his job. He started drinking heavily and did not help around the house. We bought a new house that he insisted on buying. Then I caught him looking for jobs across the country. He was not happy and I wanted stability. Story 32. We were separated, but he kept stringing me along, letting me think that if I just did as I was told, if I was smaller, skinnier, or had sex more often, he would come home to me and the children. Then, he beat our 5-year-old son and tortured him during a custody visit. While we were at the police station, my 13-year-old daughter told the police and me that he had been beating her too, but it had been going on much longer. This destroyed what little resolve I had left to save my marriage. I thought he was a good father. I was very wrong. I obtained restraining orders in both their names, and he has not seen any of us since. Story 33. I think about year 2.5 of him trying to divorce me. I started to ask myself why I was the only person fighting for our relationship. I asked myself why I had put up with 7 years of him ignoring me and demeaning my parenting to the point that my relationship with my own children had suffered. How he acted like I was scum. I knew I was not. Basically, fear of him leaving me had clouded my vision for so long that I did not realize I did not like who he had become. Once I started thinking about how my life would be infinitely less stressful and less lonely without him in it, then it was over. Story 34. We got together so young and had a baby early. I was 19. His parents helped us out a lot financially. He wanted me to stay home with the baby and eventually other children. He wanted to finish school but struggled, so I drove him every day and helped him study. He took 7 years to finish his bachelor's degree, then went back to get prerequisites because he wanted to go to medical school. I supported him. Then he missed the deadline for applying to medical school because he procrastinated on the essay. He hadn't worked a job in 7 years at that point, And while he complained all the time about me not working, he insisted that I had to have childcare covered if I did find a job. He would say things like, "You just care more about other people than your own children," when I talked about wanting to work. The next year, he missed the deadline again. He was typing his essay at 11:55 p.m., the night of the deadline, and spent so long on it that the website bugged out when he tried to submit. He lost it all and couldn't apply that year either. That was when I knew he was never going to make it work. He was never going to work, and he was never going to let me work in peace either. It took me another year to get my ducks in a row, but I left and have never once regretted it. To his credit, he did eventually make it into medical school and even graduated. It took him an extra 2 years, and then he spent another 2 years waiting for a residency. I don't feel like I missed out at all. Story 35. She tried to kill me. The COVID-19 lockdown made it clear she was abusing Adderall and experiencing amphetamine-induced psychosis. Good times. Story 36. He totaled my secondary car in an accident. He forged my name on the insurance check and used the money as a down payment on a special order truck. I only found out when I called my agent, upset that I had not received the payout. She sent me a copy of the signed check. Story 37. He got too drunk and laughed about how much he looked forward to doing to her what he was doing to me. She had just turned 2 years old. Story 38. She stopped taking care of our child, started hoarding pigeons to the point where she built an aviary in the backyard and spent all day cleaning pigeon droppings. It is a long story, but I filed for divorce. Now the house is clean, and the child is happily with me. Story 39. When I injured my back the day before Thanksgiving, we were hosting 21 people, and he complained because I asked him to move the 2 25-pound turkeys into the oven. Story 40. She leaned on me heavily for financial and emotional support for years. I did everything for her, including postponing my career so she could have children. I wanted children too, but was not in a rush. I burned myself out trying to give her everything she wanted and be everything she wanted me to be. She was never there for me in return. I went to funerals and family functions alone. I dealt with depression and eating disorders without her support because she would become angry if I brought them up. Finally, I was completely sleep-deprived and begged for a night off from childcare duties. We had 2 toddlers and a baby. She agreed and seemed sincere, then started a fight via text at 2 o'clock in the morning because I had wanted space earlier in the evening. She had done much worse things during the course of our marriage. Abusive things. Extremely irrational things. But this was the turning point because it was when I realized she would never support me in any way. Story 41. He promised he would pay more attention to me one more time. We agreed to sleep separately and everything. Then I talked to a friend and realized I was not giving him a chance for myself. I was doing it for him. I checked out of the marriage for good and was just repeating the cycle of giving him another chance because that was what I was used to. He spent all his time at home gaming with friends or in the shower. I realized he just wanted the bachelor's life and I was a live-in housekeeper. We are best friends now that we are no longer married. He is a great guy, and after I left, he dedicated himself to improving his mental and physical health. He has a lovely girlfriend who I adore, and they are honestly perfect for each other. Story 42. He kept letting the dogs defecate on the floor and never cleaned it up. He looked astonished when I walked into the kitchen where he was cooking and complained about it. Also, he was so loud when he chewed that I could hear him on a different floor with the door closed. Story 43. The man who raised me was on life support. My ex's 30th birthday was that weekend. My grandmother postponed removing life support for one day so it wouldn't be on his birthday. But that wasn't enough for him. He was devastated we didn't have a party because my dad died. I even told him to go ahead and go to the lake that weekend to celebrate without me. But he couldn't enjoy himself if I didn't leave my entire family and come with him. It was all my fault, and he would never get his 30th birthday back. I didn't even say I would never get my father back. I realized he was never going to be the partner I wanted and deserved. Story 44. I spent years dealing with emotional abuse. He absolutely loved his daughter, and I remember telling him that one day she would hear the way he talks to her mother and hate it. I sometimes imagined her as a teenager lashing out at him because he said something horrible or treated me undeservedly. Then one day she was 12, and I realized the reality. She was not going to stand up for me. This was the only relationship example she had ever known. She thought this was how it just is. The thought of my own failures causing her to enter a relationship and be treated the same made me instantly know I had to get out. I wish I had left much sooner. Story 45. Knowing how badly I wanted a third child, he went and got a vasectomy. There was a power imbalance in our marriage. When we wanted different things, I was always expected to yield. Eventually, I got tired of being treated like a second-class citizen in my own marriage. I kept waiting for my turn to make decisions and have things go my way. The answer was clearly never, and once I realized that, my love for him died. Story 46. The start of the end for me was when we went on a walk, and he got annoyed at me for being nervous of a dog and yanked my arm so hard I spun around. After that, I gradually realized that he was abusive and took steps to get myself out of there. I still grieve the person I thought I married, but my life is so much better without him in it. The last straw was technically after I left, and we went to counseling for one last attempt at saving our marriage. I told him how much he had hurt me, and he got angry. Story 47. He ruined a special family occasion once again with his anger. I had to manage my reactions in front of our children yet again. It was clear that I could not be the mother I wanted and needed to be while I was still married to him. Story 48. Alcohol abuse combined with a cocaine habit and a complete inability to help around the house or assist a parent. Asking him to help with the most basic tasks wore me down amid everything else. Dirty dishes were left next to the sink instead of being placed in the empty dishwasher. He would step over trash instead of picking it up. I had to ask permission to sleep in on a weekend. He left our 16-month-old screaming in her crib for 3 hours because he went on a bender while I was out of town for work. We both worked full-time, but it was also my responsibility to do all the cooking, cleaning, laundry, and house maintenance. I had absolutely nothing left and felt dead inside. 7 months into our divorce, I found out about one of the affairs he had with a woman who worked for him. I think the only box I can't check is physical abuse. Story 49. There was no love between us. She had almost no interest in sex, maybe once every 2 to 4 months, and never cared about my emotional or physical needs. We were like roommates, just coexisting. For more than 12 years, she slept in our bedroom while I was left to sleep downstairs on the couch. She even had her own private safety box where she saved money for herself, as if I did not matter. Story 50. I spent the first half of the day doing something I had never done before, but I will not share the details in case he reads this. It was related to an achievement. When I got home, he did not ask a single question or acknowledge it at all at any point that day. It was not the worst thing he had ever done or failed to do, but after years of neglect and abuse, it was one thing too many. Story 51. My ex-husband had many mental health issues and post-traumatic stress disorder from being shot at work as an armored car driver. He quit therapy and stopped taking his medication after we got married. He took out all his frustration on me verbally and emotionally. I stayed for 5 years hoping he would recover and start taking care of himself. However, I developed Crohn's disease, and the added stress from his abuse worsened my condition. I left him and returned to my parents' home. He refused to divorce me, so I waited 2 years to obtain an uncontested divorce without his signature in 2008. I have not spoken to him since and do not wish to ever again. Story 52. My mom told me the last straw for her was when I told her she could either kick him out or I would catch the next bus out of town because, as much as I loved her, I refused to spend another minute in the same house as him. He was gone before the bus came. She couldn't stand up for herself, but she was finally able to stand up for her daughter. Story 53. I just separated from my husband. Our 10-year anniversary is coming up, and I realized that I have been lonely throughout our entire relationship. I do not want to be lonely anymore. Story 54. He used the equity from our home to buy a bicycle, a purebred Australian Shepherd, and countless other things. Story 55. I felt undervalued and invisible for so long that I could no longer tolerate it. I felt gaslit and For a short time, I considered entering a mental health facility. I was being stolen from and having lies told about me by my ex's child, not my own, to everyone they knew. I had several social media posts from their friends and family that were extremely unkind and false. I planned all of the family holidays, vacations, children's schedules, and medical appointments, literally everything. If I wasn't on the case, nothing happened. If I missed something, I felt incredibly guilty. One of our children was due to be born around a huge traditional celebration. When my heavily pregnant self was making us late to the scheduled family function due to extreme fatigue and early labor, I was harshly criticized. One Mother's Day, I received a half-hearted gift of a clothing item that was the incorrect size, even though the correct size had been known for over 10 years. That was when I started noticing acts of indifference toward me. Since our separation over 5 years ago, I feel more heard and visible than I did while we were together. He has also stepped up and made an effort with the children and me. We are still separated, but I would now be more open to reconciliation than before, although I do not think that is likely. Story 56. Married from 2003 to 2020. I supported us financially for the first 6 years so he could go to graduate school and start his career. The standing agreement was that after 5 years in his field, he would look for employment closer to our home state so we could visit family regularly. He completely reneged on that and refused to even look. We lived 2,000 miles from home and never saw family. I missed funerals. The kids did not really know their grandparents. As I always handled birth control, the agreement was he would get a vasectomy after we were done having children. Our last child was born in 2011. He kept putting it off until I had to get myself fixed because I was afraid of getting pregnant again. I became a stay-at-home mother and struggled with mental health issues and a child with autism who required a lot of supervision and care. He was poor with housework and rarely pitched in. He would do things when told but never took initiative. In 2013, I started drinking because of the constant stress. In mid-2014, I begged to go to rehabilitation, but he did not want to use his banked vacation time to care for the children. He called my mother to take care of me. My mother locked up my keys, wallet, and prescription medications and essentially held me prisoner in my own home for 4 months. I kept telling him I needed help and that my mother was making things worse. He said he did not care. The final straw was a family vacation over Christmas break in 2018. One night in the hotel, I laid out clothing for the children to put on in the morning. He looked at me and said, "What about me? What do I put on in the morning?" At that moment, I felt utter disgust. I did not have a partner. I had an overgrown child who hounded me for sex and manual stimulation. I was done. I relapsed with my drinking, and we separated in 2020 after I demanded to go to rehabilitation. Story 57. While my former spouse struggled with alcoholism and abusive behavior, I realized that we could not communicate without upsetting each other. Story 58. Poorly managed mental health, codependence and mutual abuse, questioning my sexuality, financial concerns. Story 59. Multiple times threatening divorce and the next day acting as if nothing had happened. She never respected my opinion. We got married in the United States to build a life here. She lives in a developing country with our daughter and said she would rather endure hardship in her country than live here. Also, her mother never accepted or respected me. Story 60. My mental health. If only I could have stopped numbing behaviors sooner, I would have been able to see things more clearly. Story 61. My ex-husband checked out of our life. We had 2 children back to back, and he couldn't deal with the stress. We both had full-time jobs, and I was handling all the responsibilities at home with the children and the chores. The last straw was our oldest child screaming that he didn't want to see his father when I brought them home from daycare and saw my ex-husband's car in the driveway. Even a 2- or 3-year-old could recognize that his father was not someone he wanted to be around. Story 62. My dad has always been a narcissist and chronic liar. He yelled at my grandmother, who had Alzheimer's, at Thanksgiving over a comment she made that wasn't true. When my mom confronted him outside, he yelled at her too. After 26 years of a rocky marriage filled with lying, emotional abuse, and financial abuse, Yelling at his very disabled mother was the last straw for her. She asked him to move out that night. After a year of separation, they got divorced. It has been a year, and she is happier than she has ever been in my lifetime. Story 63. When she punched me for stealing her phone, the phone was in plain view on the bedside table on her side of the bed. Story 64. Disrespect and his depression that he and his parents absolutely hid from me. I thought I was going insane. I was not. Story 65. After 15 years of abuse and psychological torture, he accused me of faking my mother's death to scam people on GoFundMe in public on his Facebook page. That was the final straw. It was the day my mother died unexpectedly, and he chose to say that in front of people. I was done. Story 66. Disrespect of any and all likes, dislikes, and wants that did not align with her view of the world, and a disregard for how I wanted to raise our daughter and run our house. Story 67. I genuinely do not know. She walked out one night and then went on a week-long bender. The day before, she was asking for my information to add me to her health insurance. 2 days before that, she looked into my eyes and told me how she loved me more than anything in the world. There was a lot of screaming from her that I wasted her 20s as she walked out the door. Of course, after that, I found out she had been lying about our finances, much more deeply than I had previously thought. I nearly got evicted because she ran off with the rent money. There were other issues too. She had cheated on me before we got married. Not just once, but she was fully planning to run away with another woman. But I forgave her because she begged me to and insisted we get married. Maybe a month and a half after getting married, she was crying uncontrollably, saying she was unhappy being monogamous and wished I was polyamorous. This was a major deal breaker for me, which she knew. I asked if she wanted a divorce. She said yes. Then she cried harder when I reasonably got up to sleep in the other room. She took it back and said she was happy with just me and that she did not want a divorce. I had honestly been contemplating divorce myself at that point. She had not improved her spending habits, and she was almost saying she wanted to join her friend's polyamorous group. I had not told anyone except my mother that we had gotten married because I was embarrassed to be marrying someone who treated me poorly. I remember rationalizing it as, when the marriage goes south, I can quietly get divorced instead of publicly acknowledging it. When, not if. Everything about my ex was confusing. She told me she still loved me and wanted to be with me after the bender, then had a new girlfriend 3 days later. We tried to finish out the lease, and she would flirt with me when I wanted nothing to do with her. She tried to run off with my half of the rent 1 month, and that was the end of that. I finished out the lease myself and moved somewhere new. She tried to reach out because she said she missed me and wanted to be friends. The last I heard from her was about a year ago. I am finally at a point where I am not afraid of running into her when I am out. I do not even know if she lives here anymore. I did not ask for anything in the divorce and did not receive anything. I just wanted to be done with her. My mother criticized me for that, and maybe she was right. I was absolutely entitled to a large sum of money, primarily my ex's retirement account that she cashed out. That would have been enormously helpful. It could have paid off my student loans, put a down payment on a house, bought a new car since my ex took the car we shared, and still left money left over. Story 68. I could just tell that she stopped caring about me in that way. I had become a housemate and acquaintance. It had been trending that way for a while, but sometimes you have those friends who you always have to initiate every plan or conversation with. That's how it had gotten in the marriage. I infrequently got sent out of town for work, maybe once every 2 to 3 months, and on the last trip before the end, I decided to see if she would attempt any form of communication with me without being prompted. She didn't. Not one text or phone call, not even to make sure the flight had gone safely. When I got home after a week, she wasn't remotely excited to see me. Just a half-hearted hi as I walked through the door, and no follow-up conversation, with her going back to watching TV. I took about a week to think about it before telling her I was moving out. Don't get me wrong, I was far from the perfect husband, and there were definitely things I could have done differently, so it wasn't all one-sided. The sacrifices on my side were definitely larger, though. I moved from England to the United States because she didn't want to live in England. I was the only person working for 6.5 of the 8 years, and I bought the house next door to her mom. Story 69. There was a lot that led up to it, but the last straw was after he had been overseas for 7 months, leaving me behind with 2 sons, 3 dogs, a house, and cars to take care of. Then he came home for Christmas, and instead of thanking me for managing everything, he walked around the house pointing out everything I did not do. The house was not a mess. It was things like I had not swept the garage recently. I trimmed the bushes in the yard but had not picked up all the trimmings, and I put up Christmas decorations but did not get all the boxes put away. I was exhausted from taking care of everything else and had been looking forward to quality time together. But that is not what I got. I decided that day I was done. Story 70. My ex was not able to hold down a job. They made their family our responsibility and paid their bills with money I worked for. I spent 2 years taking care of 8 people who did not care about me or my partner. On top of that, I would come home to a destroyed house with our animals locked in cages because they were too much for them to handle alone. The pets were not bad. They just needed to be walked. Before the wedding, my partner had a full-time job and future plans. I found out they quit their job on the honeymoon. Story 71. Verbal and emotional abuse, substance addiction, video game addiction. What pushed me over the edge was putting a restraining order on him because he became angry and paranoid due to his addictions. I feared for my life and the lives of my children. Story 72. 6 years of abuse, it was only escalating, and I had been in denial for a long time. The last straw was that he was emotionally dead in our relationship but gave everyone else in his life his best self. Story 73. He said about my childhood sexual abuse, "If you like bondage, discipline, dominance, submission, sadism, and masochism now, that means you liked the abuse when you were 6. You wanted it. And because you never got him arrested, any other girls he molested are your fault." Story 74. She wanted me to be okay with her doing sex work with her massage clients. I decided not to continue. It was very hard to make the decision, but looking back, I am glad I did. I should have done it sooner, to be honest. Part of us almost always knows when something is not right for us. Story 75. Most divorces occur because of incompatible views on spending and saving. My brother's first wife stopped working when their first child was born but ran up $50,000 in credit card bills within 2 years. He had no idea because she worked in finance and paid all the bills until he bounced a check that he wrote without telling her. It turns out they never discussed spending before they got married. Story 76. The last straw refers to a specific event or thing that happened, not just being lazy or spending money. Story 77. I just got tired of her. Edit. Downvote me all you want. You can fall completely out of love and grow tired of someone's presence. And I bet $1 million if I said I got tired of him, it would be the top comment. Please respect others. Story 78. She thought she was my equal. I work as a professional, making more than enough to support 2 people. She, on the other hand, couldn't hold a full-time job for more than a few years without inventing a reason not to be there anymore. She constantly trivialized my time and schedule and thought that I was put on earth for her, and that if she asked me to do something, it should automatically be given priority. I'm not exaggerating. Those are her sentiments. Of course, I ended the relationship. And naturally, she wanted to get back together when reality hit her with a dose of personal responsibility. And if you read this, then congratulations. You've learned how to read. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.